So I'm now making a video going through all of the different questions that you are asked to answer. I will have what I'm working on written nice and large here, so that way you can skip through the video to get to what you need specifically. All right. The question was, you're asked to play on your middle school basketball team this year, and you recorded the points your team scored in each game below. So here's the points that your team scored. All right. The first thing you're asked to do is find the mean. So remember, in order for us to find the mean, we need to first add all these together. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to show you how you would do that. All right, so the first thing you'll do is you'll add all those numbers together. So I'm showing you that I'm adding them all together. And then to find our mean, we need to divide by however many data values we have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We have 16 numbers. So remember, you will be allowed to use a calculator. When we add all of these values up in our numerator, we would get 803. And then we divide it by 16. Well, 803 divided by 16 gave us 50.18. And then we had some other values. But I asked you to round to your nearest tenth. Well, this is our 10th value. To round to our nearest tenth, we look at the digit after it. If it is 5 or more, we then round up. If it's less than 5, it stays the same. So since 8 is greater than 5, when we round this, this would round to 50.2. So you would say 50.2 points is our average or is our mean. All right, so that is it for finding your mean. Let's move on to the next one. All right, now the first thing, or the next one we're going to do is solving for a median. When we're solving for the median, the first thing we have to do is take the data values that we have, and we need to list them from least to greatest. All right, so we need to list them from least to greatest. So let me do that real quick. All right, now I know that these are written a little bit smaller, but this is everything now listed out. And to find our median, we're looking for our middle number. So let me just make this, actually make this a little bit thinner. We're looking for our middle number. So like I said before, you will learn in the future when you get to a little bit more advanced class in 6th grade, you will learn a formula. So this way you don't have to count these, because what if you had 1,000 datas? You're not going to cross them out. But for now, what we're doing is we're just crossing them out. So I'm crossing out one on my left and crossing out one on my right. By doing that, as long as I keep crossing out one on my left and right, I'm going to eventually get to my middle number. So I'm crossing these out, crossing these out, crossing these out, right? And then now when I get to here, if I try to cross out this number to the left, then I would also have to cross this one out to the right. And remember, when we have an even number of data sets, which we know we did because we had 16 when we took the average, we know that our median is going to be the average of 2 numbers. So that means I need to take the average of these 2 numbers. So to find my median, then I will do 47 plus 47 divided by 2, which is then equal to 94 divided by 2, which is also going to be equal to 47. Anytime that number is the same, you know it's just going to give us that value at the number. But I would want to see this, because I do want to see that you understand that it's actually 2 values that we're taking the median of, and not just, okay, it's just this 147. All right, but then this will be our value. 47 points would be our median. All right, we crossed everything out until we got to our middle number. And remember, if we had an odd number, we will cross every number out, and then there'll just be 1 left over. All right, so the next one I'm moving on to now is solving for the mode. I'm going to leave these numbers here written in purple now, because that is just taking our data set and rewriting it in order. And that's something that we're going to have to do a few times. And once you write it once on your assessment, it will be easier for you to then continue with using that data. So rather than having to rewrite it a bunch of times, I'm just going to leave it there just one time. All right, so now our mode is what number occurs most. All right, which numbers repeat it the most? Well, when I'm showing you guys, when it's written out in order, it's much easier for us to see, because I see I have 33 that repeats, I have 44 that repeats, and I have 47 that repeats, and that's it. And since all of them repeat 2 times, they all repeat the exact same amount of time. That means that they're all our mode. So our mode, or in this case, modes, we actually have 3 of them. We have 33 points. We have 44 points. And we have 47 points. All right, in this case, we actually have 3 modes. If you just wrote it as 33, 44, and 47, you would get credit as well. You don't need to write the points necessarily. All right, but our mode is which ones occur the most. And if we have multiple values that occur the same amount, as long as it's more than 1, then that means they're all our mode. All right, so for our next one, our range, what we're seeing is how wide is our data, if you want to think of it like that? Like, how many numbers does our data extend between? So for this, we take our largest value, our largest number, and we simply subtract the smallest number, right? It is really easy to find our range. So in this case, our largest value is 72. So we would do 72. Our smallest is 30. So 72 minus 30 is 42. So 42 points, or just 42, you can write, that would be our range. So it tells us the difference between our largest and our smallest number. All right, now we're going to move on to number 2, which is now going to be graphing these in 3 different ways. All right, so the next one that we're going to do is our stem and leaf plot. So when we go to do this, the first thing that we're going to have to do is let's just create where our stem and leaf is going to go. So I'm going to write this here. I'll draw my little T chart. I will put stem, and I will put leaf. Above it, in a different color, I'm going to say points scored. So I'm titling or labeling my stem and leaf. I notice that my values go from 30 to 72. So that means my stem will have to have 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So let me just extend this. All right, and then now that it's written in order for me, that's why I'm saying I was only going to write it once. It should be nice and easy for me to go ahead and list out my leaves. So I scored 30, 33, 33, and 38. So that means I will have 0, 3, 3, and 8. In the 40s, I scored 41, 44, 44, 47, 47. So 41, 44, 44, 47, and 47. In the 50s, it was 55 and 58, so 5 and 8. In the 60s, it was 60, 64, 67, so 60, 64, and 67. And in the 70s, it was 70 and 72, right? Most of you were able to get that. The thing that you guys missed is you need to write your key. So normally the key will go underneath. Since I don't have that much space in this, I'm just going to write it off to the side. So I will say key. Actually, let me erase this and make this a little bit further back, make sure I have enough space. So my key, so let's say our key is equal to, let's just do 4-1. So 4-1 is equal to, instead of saying this is equal, I'm going to put colon. So our key, 41 is equal to 41 points. All right, make sure that you are writing your key. Most of you are forgetting to write your key, so make sure you're writing this out. All right, it's important because you need to write it so that way anyone who looks at the stem and leaf plot will understand exactly what it is this means. All right, because remember this 3 and this 0 means 30. This 4 and this 7 means 47. This 5 and this 8 means 58. This 6 and this 0 means 67. And this would mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to write the 7 here. This should have been a 2. And this 7 and this 2 means 72. All right, so that is your stem and leaf. All right, so the next one is your histogram. Now, if I don't give you your frequency table, you need to make one. So when you're making your frequency table, you need to create, actually, I'm just going to redraw this a little bit just to make sure that I have enough space. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of create it like it's the T-chart, and then I'll just close it off at the end. So we would have points scored. Then we would have our frequency. Then we're writing our intervals. I gave you all of your intervals here, so we would have 30 through 39. Let me just pause this and I'll fill in the rest of the table. All right, so now I created our frequency table, which is our points scored and our frequency. So now I'm going through my list, and this is why it's also good to have them written out, is I'm going through my list and seeing, well, how many times did we score in the 30 to 39 points? Well, we scored that 4 times, so my frequency is 4. How many times did I score in the 40 points? So did our team score in the 40 points? Well, 5 times. How many times did we score in the 50 points? Well, 2 times. How many times did we score in the 60 points? 3 times. And how many times did we score in the 70 points? 2 times. So what we're doing is we're seeing how many times did we score within these intervals. And it's giving us the frequency or how many times they occurred. All right, I will provide the frequency or the intervals for you on your assessment. You will not need to create those. All right, once you do that, you then are going to create your X and Y axis almost, where you're going to draw here where we just have our quadrant 1. We look at our frequency. What is the most that our numbers occurred? Well, 5. So since that's a small amount, that means I'm going to count by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let me just add the 6 there. So I'm going to list what my frequency is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Over here, I'm going to write this a little, see if I can, nope. Okay. I'm just going to write this sideways frequency. Over here, normally I write it going vertical. And then on the bottom, I'm going to write what my intervals are. Well, my intervals are here, 30 through 39 and so on. So it will be 30 through 39. Then it will be 40 through 49. Actually, let me pause this and write these in. All right, so now I wrote in my intervals here on the bottom. And then now all I'm going to do is create what you might think looks like a bar graph. Remember, it's different because our histograms have to touch. So between 30 and 39, that occurred 4 times. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my bar graph here between my interval of 30 and 39 of 4. My next one, 40 to 49, occurred 5 times. So I'm going to draw my next bar graph here. Remember, we want to try and keep these bar graphs looking identical in or as close to the same thickness as we can. So that's why it's important for you guys to keep your intervals spaced out evenly. Our next one was 2, so I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 for my next bar graph. And then the next frequency was 3, so between 60 and 69, it's going to be 3, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my bar graph there. And remember, since it's a histogram, they are touching, they're not discrete like a bar graph. And then the last one here, I'm going to draw 2 for the frequency for that interval 70, 79. All right, and that is my histogram. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is you would have to create your frequency table if it's not already created for you. And in that point, we're just looking and seeing how many times did each interval occur. So we're filling out our frequency for them occurring. After we fill that out, we're then going to create our X and Y axis, we'll call it, our quadrant 1, where our frequency will go on the left-hand side. Our points scored or interval will go on the bottom, and then we will title it, so it is points scored. All right, and then from there, we're just filling in our frequency by how much they occurred. And it's very, very important that you are connecting your bar graphs. All right, that is it for your histogram. And then the last one is our box and whisker plot, and then we'll be done with this video. All right, now the last one is our box and whisker plot. For this, we need to find our 5-number summary. All right, and you will need to show me this on your assessment. So our 5-number summary, we have our least value, we have our first quartile, we have our median, we have our third quartile, and we have our greatest value. All right, and all we're going to do now is fill in these numbers. Now, writing these out the way I did was on purpose because now I know I can use it again at this point. So my least and my greatest are very easy for me to figure out. So my least is 30, my greatest is 72. We already solved for our median in the beginning, 47. The one thing I'm going to do now, though, is since we know that our median was at 47, I know that that is cutting my data into 2 groups. All right, we have our lower half, which is in blue, and we have our upper half, which is in red. And now we need to go ahead and find the median of those groups as well. So I'm just going to cross this out. So I'm going to cross out the 30 and the 47. I'll cross out the 33 and the 44. I'll cross out the 33 and this 44. Now, if I try to cross out 38, I'd have to also cross out 41. So that means these 2 values are going to be what my median is. So, or my first quartile. So 38 plus 41 divided by 2. Well, this will then give me 79 divided by 2, which is going to give me 39.5. So I'll leave this in blue, 39.5. So that way you can see that that value gave us our first quartile. Then when we move to our second half of our values, we'll do the same thing. So I'll cross those out. So we need to find the median of this value as well. So now as I cross these out, I'm left with these 2 values in between, 60 and 64. So now I can add these, 60 plus 64 divided by 2. This gives me 124 divided by 2, which is equal to 62. So I know that this third quartile had a value of 62. Right now, the next thing that I need to do is I need to figure out what is my number line going to be when I'm drawing this box and whisker plot. So I'm going to look at 30, at my range pretty much, my 30 to my 72, my greatest to the smallest. So maybe you'd want to count in 2s. Maybe you'd want to count in ones. It's up to you. I'm going to count in fives. So let me go ahead and pause this video and draw my number line. All right, so I decided to count in fives. So I went ahead and put 25 to 80 on the number line. And now I just need to go ahead and plot every single one of these points. So 30, I'm going to go ahead and plot 30. Remember, we're leaving a space in between the number line and the point that we're plotting because we're actually going to draw the boxes here. So if you put them on the number line, and you're not going to be able to see your box and whisker, so make sure you're putting it above. And we're going to keep all these points almost at the same height that we can. So 39.5 is almost 40. So I'm going to get as close as I can to that 40 to put my point there. 47 is right after, almost in the middle, right after 45. So I'll put my point there. 62 is the same thing as 47. It's not directly in the middle. It's a little bit closer to 60. So we'll go ahead and put that there. And 72, the same thing, slightly after. All right, some of you guys were doing counting as 2s and 4s. You can count however you want when you're making your number line. All right, then from here, I'm going to draw a rectangle around my first and third quartile. Right, I would expect you guys to be able to use a ruler in class and make it a little bit straighter. Then I'm going to draw a line going through my median here. And then remember, we connect our greatest and our smallest value with these straight lines. Hence why it's called a box and whisker plot. All right, what I would suggest that maybe you do is go ahead and fill in these numbers underneath these points. So it'll be 30, 39.5. So you can say exactly what they were. The next one is 47. The next one is 62. And the last one is 72. This is kind of allows you to let the reader know exactly where you're meaning with those points because we're not plotting it on the number line. So it could be a little bit harder for the reader to see what it is. So you can go ahead and put those values there. All right, this is it. All right, that is it for this video. This is what you'll need to know how to do for your next class for your assessment. And then you will get a couple questions that I will give you the graphs and you'll have to then give me some answers based on the graphs provided.